Here are the 5 biggest wrestling news for this week. And everybody was talking about the big one. And we're going to start it off here because I know a lot of people were asking about our opinions for this here on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. Joining me is Ralph Valenti. Ralph, massive cuts again in WWE. We know of 9 names. A little surprising, some of them. Samoa Joe, Mickie James, Peyton Royce and Billie Kay, Chelsea Green, Wellesley Blake, Tucker, Kalisto, and Bo Dallas. So, Ralph, what are your thoughts on the cuts here?
Obviously, WWE coming out of WrestleMania, what a lot of people would consider a successful WrestleMania. I think that so many times it's just like WWE does so many things to shoot themselves in the foot, because it really seemed like, following WrestleMania, a lot of people were satisfied. They thought it was a good WrestleMania. It was a good performance. Fans were back. People were happy. And coming out of that, they put, more or less a less than newsworthy Raw on. And then following that, later on in the week, these cuts happened. And a lot of people were critical of them. And a lot of people are looking at that and more or less saying, look, it's still the same WWE. The one that surprised me most was Samoa Joe. Now, there's a lot of things that are kind of surrounding his release and a lot of things that people are talking about, mostly that, he was injured and he couldn't get cleared to work. So at that point, is WWE releasing him because essentially they're paying him, wrestler's salary or top dollar to do what he was doing in commentating? I really don't know. I think what happened,
I think what happened was Samoa Joe wants to wrestle. Yes. WWE wouldn't clear him. So I wonder if he asked for his release.
It's possible.
I think that's probably the case because, we're going to talk about this a little later. We find out that Pat McAfee is going to be commentating on SmackDown. So I wonder if Joe is supposed to go off Raw to move to SmackDown. He didn't want to do that. He wants to wrestle, so he asked for his release. We haven't heard anything from Samoa Joe regarding that or a statement from him, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case.
Yeah, no, and that wouldn't surprise me either. I mean, I think a lot of times there's a lot of narratives that get thrown around whenever WWE does these types of releases, because it's always going to be viewed as a negative thing, and maybe rightfully so, because unfortunately people are losing their jobs and they're losing their ability to make money. And right now, in what is the biggest wrestling promotion in the world, now, if you want to think about this just as like from a common man perspective, from the common man's perspective. You could work in any industry. If you're a guy that is essentially busting your ass every day, and not to say that these individuals who are released aren't working their ass off, but they certainly aren't being utilized on TV, right? So WWE has essentially decided, aside from Samoa Joe, we're not necessarily going to use these people in an elevated situation. Like, they're not going to be a prominent force on the shows. I can't say I necessarily blame them for letting go of talent that they're not going to necessarily use, because yes, I get it. And this is one of the things I saw get thrown around. Well, they just got $1 billion deal from Peacock. Yeah, they did, but that doesn't mean they're obligated to employ everybody. And moreover, I mean, people always complain, well, WWE is gobbling up as much talent as it possibly can. They shouldn't just feel obligated or have an obligation to employ people if they're not going to utilize them. Being a wrestler, working in any specific, craft of some sort, that's like taking the paintbrushes away from an artist. Like, they let those people go and work elsewhere. If Samoa Joe can go and wrestle elsewhere because he couldn't get cleared by the WWE, well, that's probably what's best for Samoa Joe, and it's probably best for the fans anyway. So I know that people are going to look at this as a negative, and maybe rightfully so in some instances. You see all these things getting thrown out there about budget cuts. We don't know if any of that's true. Those are all rumors. It could be true. It might not be true. We aren't going to know that stuff.
Right.
But other than Samoa Joe, does it really surprise me that they let go of Peyton Royce and Billie Kay?
Billie Kay, because she was such a focal point on SmackDown, and also the fact that she actually got a pin at WrestleMania Night 1 during the Tag Team Turmoil match, pinning Naomi. So that is a little surprising. Everyone else, I mean, they weren't using Tucker. They weren't using Kalisto. Chelsea Green, every time she had a debut, she broke her arm. That one kind of surprised me, especially because she just recently re-signed a deal and then just got cut. But I've seen some people say, if you're not going to use these guys, right? Why not sign them in the first place? And I'll take it from personal experience here. Before the current position that I have at my job, I was in a department that was just opened up, and I got moved to that department, and there were a lot of plans for it. A lot of plans for it. I was at that position for 2 years. And then they did basically like what Office Space does. The movie Office Space, they had people come in and they ask everybody what they do. They asked us what we do. And based on their analysis, they found that our department was not worth paying these guys. So unfortunately, they cut the department. Luckily, they got a different position for me to move to. And that's where I am now, my current position. So for those that are saying, why sign them if there's no plans for them? There may have been plans for them. Look, a lot of these guys had great runs in NXT, but then they go to the main roster. And whether it's Kevin Dunn saying that there's a ceiling for Billy Kay, which I think was stupid on his part, or
Agreed.
Samoa Joe, now is only a commentator in Vince McMahon's mind, possibly. The same thing happened in 1993, 94 with Macho Man Randy Savage. He went on to WCW and had another 15 years to his career.
Exactly. Plans change, and you can never always account for what's going to happen in the future because you don't know if somebody's actually going to be able to get over or if somebody's going to get injured. I'm sure, actually, I'm positive based on knowing and watching enough documentaries that there were plans for Dr. Death Steve Williams, but unfortunately he went in the Brawl for All and he got knocked out. And essentially that was the end of his career in the WWE. There were plans for somebody like Sin Cara to come in and be that next big luchador, somebody like a Rey Mysterio. It didn't work out. Sometimes things don't go according to plan. Now, is WWE tone deaf in certain situations? Yes, I think that it was wrong of them to do it on the same exact date. I think that was a huge mistake from a PR standpoint. But I also don't think that the WWE should feel obligated to just keep people under contract and pay them if they're not going to utilize them. Let them go elsewhere. Let them go to Ring of Honor. Let them go to Impact. Let them go to AEW. Let them do other things. I think the worst thing you could possibly do, look at if they decided to keep FTR under contract and just, look what's become of them. I mean, I know why people are upset and I get it, but I think we can understand both aspects of it and still, be okay with it. The worst thing they did was do it on the same exact date, in my opinion.
Yeah. And like, look at the silver lining, I think, at this point. Yes, it sucks that these guys lost their job, but they got experience in the WWE. And I'm sure there's a ton of promotions that will be happy to hand over a contract or offer some kind of thing. And now the independent scene was stronger than ever before the pandemic started. So they could definitely work independent dates as well. So do I think this is the end of their professional wrestling career? Absolutely not. I'm sure Chelsea Green will be signed on July 14th. I'm sure Samoa Joe will be signed July 14th. If Mickie James wants to be signed somewhere, she definitely will. And between now and July 14th, there's definitely going to be speculations on where all these guys go. Now, unfortunately, WWE were not the only ones in the news regarding releases. AEW earlier in the week were part of releases as well. Actually, not releases, one release, and that is Ivelisse. So she was part of the tag team with Diamante that won the tag team tournament in the women's division late last year. Haven't really seen her much since. I know she did some matches on Dark. I think she may have appeared on Dynamite once or twice, but recently came onto Twitter. History repeats itself. Unfortunately, I speak up about mistreatment and get let go. That's life. So obviously this leads to the fact that she has been released by AEW. She is a free agent, but Fightful Select reached out to her and she gave the following statement, Ralph. Spoke up about mistreatment from a coach, even to other women too. There were witnesses and I was the one suspended and left in limbo and now just let go. And nothing has been done at all the entire time about Thunder Rosa slandering my name the entire time in AEW and doing everything to sabotage my position here. I kept quiet. Thunder Rosa also has a history of getting involved with officials in order to get ahead, which there was a lawsuit and everything in with Lucha Underground. A lot to dive in here, Ralph.
Yeah.
I know Ivelisse has her past, especially with Thunder Rosa. I know a lot of people on Twitter were looking at the match that they had on Dynamite where there was obviously some miscommunication or no selling from Ivelisse. That could have led to this whole thing with her backstage with Thunder Rosa. This one's hard, Ralph. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and these are typically the situations I don't like to speak upon because at this point it's more or less like a he said she said
Yeah.
gossip situation. But unfortunately, again, similar to like what we are just talking about with WWE, somebody has now lost their job and their role in said company, and the company at hand right now is AEW. So, is there more that's going to come out of this? I'm sure other people, now that this
Mhm.
quote has gotten out there, they will reach out to Ivelisse. They will try to get her side of the story. I'm sure at some point we will get Thunder Rosa's side of the story. I think the thing that kind of looks bad for Ivelisse is there are tons of gifts going around of her no selling in her match to Thunder Rosa. And
Right.
when it comes down to it, on live national TV, that's a bad look. That's a really, really bad look in a profession where you're supposed to go out there and essentially convince the people who are watching and the people in the audience that what you're doing is a legitimate shoot type fight.
Mhm.
It's a wrestling at people can call it different things. I always refer to it as a simulated fight because the outcome is determined and they're working together, but you're still trying to convince the fans and people watching that it is real. She's got a past. This doesn't help her case. I can't imagine fans are going to side with her just based on what I've seen from people posting on social media.
Right.
I think a couple more shoot interviews between maybe her and Thunder Rosa, and this will kind of people will decide what side they want to pick. What's going to be interesting is this so-called coach. Who's the coach?
Right.
His mistreatment of other women. Who are the other
Mhm.
women involved? And is it legitimate? And I'm sure at some point, maybe not in the near future, but maybe the distant future, those things will come out.
Right. As far as her past with, calling out mistreatment from coaches, she was one of those whistleblowers about Bill DeMott in NXT that led to his, departure from NXT as the head trainer there. I know her and Thunder Rosa have had a past before when they were in Lucha Underground. So there could be some stuff that holds water with Ivelisse. I don't want to be the guy that says, oh, Ivelisse is definitely in the right, but I also don't want to say Thunder Rosa is definitely in the right because like you
Right.
said, we have to hear both sides of the story. Maybe Thunder Rosa keeps quiet until, eventually Ivelisse stays quiet as well and everything blows over. Ivelisse gets another job
Yeah.
somewhere or just runs the independent circuit. I know she has a championship, I believe, with Shine. So, it sucks. And we see this sometimes where guys or girls get bad reputations from one incident. And because of that, they're blackballed among promotions. So, who
You still
knows?
gotta perform. You look at HBK and Bret Hart. I mean, if you
Right.
go back, they hated each other during
Yep.
the Attitude Era, and they still had to go out there and perform. I mean, you have to go out there, you have to be able to do your job, and unfortunately for Ivelisse, at least from what we've seen and what was presented on TV, it was obvious she went out there with other alternatives and a different mission in mind at that night,
Right.
so
Right. Well, I think one person we could kind of call or say it's definitely not Dustin Rhodes. She did wish him a happy birthday recently on Twitter. So the coach that she's calling out most likely is not Dustin Rhodes, who, helps run the Nightmare Factory. He's got a school of his own now. So probably not him, but I'd be interested to see if a name gets dropped for who that coach is. But Ralph, enough about talking about releases, all this negative news. Let's brighten it up. Let's be positive here. We have a new commentator on Raw and a new commentator on SmackDown. On Raw, the lead play-by-play guy is Adnan Virk, who replacing Tom Phillips. And on SmackDown, you saw him kill it with Adam Cole in NXT, but now he is the color commentator for SmackDown, Pat McAfee. What are your thoughts on these decisions? And what'd you think of their first nights behind the mic on WWE?
did you ever see the episode of South Park where they lost their jobs? I believe the Canadians lost their jobs. Exactly, exactly. Somewhere there are commentators doing that right now. My God, polar opposites. Pat McAfee is a natural. He is funny. He is witty. He is a personality, and he's like a breath of fresh air because with Michael Cole and a lot of the WWE announce team, it is very polished. It is very corporate. It is very, it's just very structured
Yeah.
and it almost comes off as robotic. Pat
Yep.
McAfee does not come across that way at all. It's like,
No.
okay, I'm a fan. I'm going to speak what's on my mind. He reminded me a little bit of like JR and Paul Heyman. Now, JR, I'm certainly not comparing them to the corporate structured Michael Cole that we kind of get on a week
Sure.
to week basis, but you know, he was the more polished guy. And obviously Paul Heyman was the very rugged, in your face type guy. And that's what I get with Pat McAfee. Now, the other gentleman on Raw, now, what was his name?
Adnan Virk.
I was not impressed with Mr. Adnan Virk. I thought that he came across very nervous, which understandably so. He came across as somebody who doesn't actually watch pro wrestling, probably wasn't actually a fan of pro wrestling, and I could be wrong, but like the things he was saying were just kind of very indie, like very generic, like, oh wow, what a slam. Look at that. Like I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be a rough go at it. I'm not sure about this.
Can we at least agree? Can we at least agree he's not as bad as Mike Adamle?
You know, it's funny you say that because he's always the guy that kind of comes to mind, but he reminds me of him, Mike Adamle, because
oh God,
it's like it's not natural. It's like he has to stop and think, and like the way he refers to move sets, like, you know, Vince McMahon back in the day, oh, what a maneuver, something like that. You know, it's just, I don't know. It's not generic. It comes off as very, very forced. And I was like, I don't know how this guy got this position, but I don't think there was any actual tryout because I think it would have been glaring that this guy is not a wrestling fan. He did not.
I think there was though. I think he did have an audition because I remember seeing stuff around where Adnan Virk has still yet to meet Vince McMahon, which I would think if you're auditioning for the play-by-play guy for Raw, Vince McMahon would be there, but perhaps he watched the tape or whatever and was like, good shit, pal.
It doesn't that go counterproductive or counter to the narrative that Vince McMahon is always screaming in somebody's ear?
You would think, but maybe Adnan Virk just pulled his earpiece out and was like, I'm not listening to this guy. I need to watch this and just react to it. Yeah. I don't know. I know Pat McAfee. McAfee was definitely not listening to Vince if he gave him any cues. I could picture in the control room, Kevin Dunn screaming and F-bombing all the time, where you see Pat McAfee standing up in the background from the announce table. And while Michael Cole's, trying to pitch something, you see Pat McAfee standing up, and there was a point where McAfee was trying to sit down and they were like, no, stand back up because now the shot's ruined because you stood up to begin with.
Well, I kind of like the dynamic between him and Michael Cole because Michael Cole's like, I thank you for showing up to work. You haven't been at a single meeting today. Like, did you take any notes? And he was like, they kind of worked well together, at least for one night. And I'm not a huge fan of Excalibur just because I think he's over the top, but you could tell that he's obviously a pro wrestling fan. And when him and Jim Ross are together, even with Tony Schiavone there, it's not forced. Like there's no corporate structure. Like we're not going to, like if somebody gets hurt, they're getting taken to a hospital. They're not taken to a medical facility.
Right.
Like silly shit like that. It's like, what the hell is a medical facility? It's a freaking hospital.
But it's not always a hospital. It could be an urgent care
center. Oh, okay. Yes,
it could be your local pediatrician. It could be a urologist. Anything that's a medical facility. They could be going to the cardiologist for all we know to work on a leg injury. I don't know, but you can't say hospital for some reason.
Oh, you get the gist.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I thought Pat McAfee did a very good job. He's a breath of fresh air. I think he will complement Friday Night SmackDown very well. I liked it.
Yeah, I agree. But another positive news here, Ralph. We just recently did an episode about what changes AEW needs to make to not only keep, but also grow their ratings. They had a big week on AEW Dynamite this week, over 1 million viewers, number 2 in the 18 and 49 demographic. One thing that we brought up was make the rankings mean something. Yeah. Darby Allin must have listened to our episode because what does he do? He tweets out the rankings. He calls out Tony Khan and says, pick one of those 5. They're going for the TNT Championship this week, and it is now the main event of Dynamite this week. Darby Allin versus Jungle Boy. I love this. I love the decision. I love that. You know what? Yeah, it's on social media, but it gets people excited for the people that follow Darby Allin and follow Jungle Boy, and I know a lot of the AEW fans like both of them. Put them in the main event. They're keeping the stars focused on something, giving them TV time. Please no shenanigans, Tony. Please no shenanigans. Just let these kids wrestle for 20 minutes.
That's all they need to do. Like, no, we don't need to see Sting. Look, I'll take this. Let them have their match. If you want to save your one run in for when the match is over, by all means, the match is over.
Sure.
But let them go out there and do their thing. Jungle Boy is a very good young talent. Darby Allin is a very good young talent who they both have a lot of upside, but you need to let them go out there and deliver. And the fans, obviously, whether it was people who are interested who don't normally watch AEW and they used to choose between NXT and AEW or didn't watch AEW at all, obviously people tuned in last week.
Mm-hmm.
And you never know. More people might tune in this upcoming week as well, because now that the big numbers are being reported, there's some buzz. Tyson was there, so maybe the word is getting out there that Tyson was there. Who knows? The number
Right.
could be bigger than what it was this
Mm-hmm.
past week. You need to let those guys go out there and deliver. Don't worry about the shenanigans. Don't worry about the run-ins. Let it be about the title. Let the two guys go out there, give them 20 minutes, and let them tear the house down. More
Right.
than capable of doing it.
Right. Oh, I totally agree. I agree 100%. I love that Darby just went out there and was like, pick one of the top 5.
Yeah.
And, we already know Powerhouse Hobbs, who's number 5. He's got a match with Christian Cage. We know that Hangman Page, who's number 1, is going to have a match with Ricky Starks. Jungle Boy at number 3 is going to be in the TNT Championship match. Cody and Moxley are the only ones that don't have a match this week, but who knows? They get some kind of TV time this week. Maybe Moxley comes back and beats up Kenny Omega, or Cody comes back and beats up QT Marshall. I'm glad that they didn't need to listen to our podcast. I'm not saying they did, but a lot of things that they did this past week, they, should continue to do, because if they continue to do that, they're going to grow the audience easily. And they keep the stars on TV. Jungle Boy and Darby do that. Give them the rankings mean something. They're doing that. I think this Dynamite is going to be very, very good with what they're giving us. It's going to be a good episode of Dynamite, I hope.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, literally, if they go out there and let the people that we just talked about go out there and just work their match, and then obviously some compelling situations, advancement of storylines, I think they'd be fine.
Yep, I agree. All right, so let's close it out with a little bit of a controversial topic within the IWC, because it seems like every time this guy gives out his ratings, we got to talk about it because everybody has an opinion on it. Dave Meltzer has gotten his star ratings out for this past week's Dynamite and also WrestleMania. Here are the key points here. The Young Bucks versus Rey Fenix and Pac got a 5 stars. Roman Reigns and Edge and Daniel Bryan got 4.5. Seth Rollins and Cesaro got 4 stars. Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair also getting 4 stars. I'm not going to be like, okay, let's take this guy's word for gospel, but I kind of expected this to happen. The Bucks and Ray Pac match, it was a good match. Some could say it's worthy of 5 stars. The triple threat match, I think, could have been 5 stars. All these matches I brought up could have been 5 stars, in my opinion. So take it for what it's worth, in my opinion. But Ralph, what are your thoughts?
To be quite honest with you, I didn't even know that Pac and Rey Fenix and the Young Bucks got 5 stars until you just said that, because I've been at a car dealership all day. My phone's been dead. So
yep.
That's certainly surprising to me. Look, I'm not gonna pick the match apart. I think that there were obvious clunky spots. I felt that the match was a little long. I mean, if you like a Young Bucks match, I'm sure you're going to be like, that was 5 stars. And if you don't like the Young Bucks match, I think you're going to say that it wasn't 5 stars. So you're either going to be one or the other, and very few people will be like middle of the road on that.
Well, just to say, I do like the Young Bucks. I did not think that was a 5-star match. I thought it was a little too long, but that's just me. That's just me. You guys can let us know in the comment section how many stars you thought it could have gotten. Maybe it would have got 7 in the Tokyo Dome. Maybe it would have got 3 in the Thunderdome or 2 in the Performance Center. I don't know. I'm not Dave Meltzer. I don't know what his criteria is, but it was 5 stars for him. Good for Dave Meltzer for providing that.
At that point, you're essentially saying that one match was better than any match on WrestleMania. And, it could have been better than a good majority of the matches on WrestleMania, depending on who you ask.
Yep.
But I think there's a handful of matches that at least were as good as it are definitely better than that.
Right.
And the 2 main events, in my opinion, were definitely better than the Young Bucks match. But again, it's all subjective. It's what you value. It's what you think. I think that at the very least, Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks should have been equivalent to the match that we saw between Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker. But at the end of the day, that Dave Meltzer didn't feel like it was. So I don't know. It's one guy's opinion. It's all subjective. I think that when you have things like this happen, this is why people say he favors AEW or he has a bias towards AEW because, people are going to look at that and automatically say, so that match alone was better than any match on WrestleMania.
Right.
Britt Baker versus Thunder Rosa was better than Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks. And, if you truly think that, that's fine. But at the end of the day, what made Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker a great match? I think a lot of it had to do with the shock factor, the factor that, there was thumbtacks involved and whatever else. And Britt Baker sold her ass off. But and this is my opinion. I've said this before. I think it is harder to work a match when there is not weapons involved because you have to actually, you can't, you can't rely on the shock factor. You can't rely on any one person being thrown into a burning table or
Right.
off a scaffolding or through whatever else. You can't do. I mean, you can do that, but it's much harder to do it when you don't have the luxury of thumbtacks being put in somebody's back and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
that's just my opinion. But
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with you on some of that there. I think also part of the equation has to go with length of time with the match. And I think a lot of people will not give 5 stars to a match or whatever your criteria is or whatever A, B, whatever you want to use for a rating system. Some people take time of match into the equation. So if the Young Bucks have a 30-minute match with Rey Fenix and Pac, and let's say 27 of the 30 minutes was amazing, they're going to give it 5 stars. Whereas
was there not glaring botches in that match? Like
you'd have to give me examples because off the top of my head, I didn't see any obvious ones. I just, to me, felt like the match was just a little too long for my personal preference. That's the only thing I got out of it. But with Sasha and Bianca, I think the match was less than 20 minutes. I know that because no match on WrestleMania this weekend was more than 18 minutes, I think. I'd have to look again, but the fact that it wasn't a 20, 30, 40-minute match, people are going to be like, no, it wasn't long enough to be a 5-star match. And that's personal preference too. So I just want to know what the hell his criteria is. I just want to know. Like, Dave, please give your criteria. What the hell is your criteria for what's a 5-star match and what's a 1-star match? Like, you're telling me, and time of when these matches occur, because the Bucks and Ray and Pac can't be better than Macho Man and Steamboat. It can't be better than Taker and Shawn Michaels. It can't be better than a lot of matches that never got 5 stars. But I mean, I just want to know what the hell his criteria is.
Listen, that's the type of wrestling he likes. He likes fast pace, spotty at times. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I think that right now he looks at the industry of pro wrestling and he says, you know what, that's different. And I'm going to rate it higher because it's different and they're trying to do something different. Now, does different mean it's better? I don't think so, because I think that, for all the reasons we talked about, I think there was better matches that happened over the course of the past week. So it's just what he values. I like you, I struggle to get a pulse of what he's actually rating these matches on.
Right. And is it just because the Bucks were in it, it's 5 stars? Like, if you take out the Bucks and put FTR in and they have the same exact matches, it's still 5 stars. If you took out Rey Fenix and Pac and put in Kenny Omega and Hangman Page and they have the same exact match, is it 6 stars? Is it 7 stars? Like, I just want to know. It bothers me. It really, I mean, it shouldn't bother me. I understand that. It's just one man's opinion. But a lot of people take his star rating for gospel. Even the Young Bucks today changed their Twitter bio to say, ooh, we got another 5-star match. Like, they really care so much about his damn star ratings. And I'm glad Dax Hardwood was able to tweet out, because his match with Jericho was the highest rated segment on Dynamite this past week. And he goes, I'm more about these ratings than the star ratings of one guy's opinion. So I'm glad he said something about that. But maybe it's in the newsletter, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen an actual Wrestling Observer newsletter since our dad had them in the 90s. So
I've got a pile of them in my closet right in front of me right now that I got from Dad, actually.
Well, see if you can find a criteria for his star ratings in any of those, and maybe we can talk about it one day. Well, let us know what you guys think of the releases of both AEW and WWE, Dave Meltzer star ratings, and also the new commentary team for WWE. In the comments below, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications to join our conversation, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Squared Circle Psychobabble.